Everyone likes gadgets. That's why today we've lined up some gadgets for RC use, and some of these are just cool, some of these are really helpful, and some of these are must-haves. Got a dusty car, a dusty transmitter, or a dusty workspace? No problem. This is the Super Blower from Muchmore, and it blows air with a maximum high-speed rotation of 110,000 RPM. And it really blows. It's not a vacuum, so it doesn't suck, but it will make fast work of dust and light debris. Plus, on hot days, you can blow yourself. This awesome little blower has 4 different speeds. It's rechargeable, portable, and easy to store. It is a little pricey, but it's a great alternative if you can't have an air compressor like us, and it's a lot cheaper in the long run than buying canned air. Cell checkers are an oldie but a goodie and a must-have for anybody dealing with LiPo batteries. They're not as exciting and won't make your jaw drop like a LiPo fire, but nobody wants that. Occasionally monitoring the cell voltages within your LiPo is just plain smart. I recommend a cell checker that has a cell balance feature that will rebalance any cells that may have gotten misaligned, which is of course not safe. Most balance chargers will always make sure your LiPos stay balanced, but it's good to have a safety check. Now this gadget isn't really a must-have, it's more like an RC luxury. It's a dedicated discharger. Most chargers can discharge a battery in a few hours, where a dedicated discharger can do it in minutes. If you deal with a lot of batteries and time is of the essence, a dedicated discharger will drain your batteries rather than your patience. Dedicated dischargers are not cheap, but for the serious enthusiast, it's a worthy investment. Another great item is going to be an electric screwdriver to help speed up your RC builds or your teardowns. Something like this Muchmore unit uses a convenient 1/4-inch hex bit, has a rechargeable battery, and it's cheaper than most hardware store screw guns. It's a lot smaller and easier to store too. Any electric screwdriver with an adjustable clutch will really do the job, and it's a great item to have. Another time saver is the vacuum pump for bleeding RC shocks and gear differentials, and it will greatly speed up the bleeding process, pulling all the air bubbles out from any silicone fluid. Waiting for the bubbles to bleed out isn't necessarily an issue usually, but if time is limited and you have a lot to do, the pump will do the work in a fraction of the time, and it will do it more consistently job to job. Plus, if you get the larger off-road version of the pump, it should cover all your off-road and on-road applications from 8 scale, 10 scale, and smaller. Speaking of diffs, a diff analyzer can be a great gadget to have for measuring differential resistance, which can be a great tuning aid for differential setup. Plus, it can help determine the resistance of different brands of fluids, measure how much the fluid breaks down over time, and how much the fluid is affected by temperature. Having a notebook handy to document the results is going to be a must if you use this. This also works with 10 scale ball diffs, and it's a great way to tune a new ball diff to the same values as the last one. For 10 scale racers, a brushless motor analyzer can be a great way to collect data on your brushless motor. SkyRC and G-Force both offer a similar analyzer that measures and reports motor KV, RPM, current draw, timing, and sensor functions. A deeper dive into brushless motors would be the Phantom Rotor Tester, which allows you to test the magnetic field strength of your motor's rotor, which you could then compare to other rotors you have to determine the strongest. On the stator side of the motor, the resistance and inductance meter from Phantom will measure the stator's resistance, which you want as low as possible, and measure the inductance, which you want to be as high as possible. This is all pretty fancy stuff for the hardcore RC racer, and they're not cheap, but they're hand-built in the USA. Now, if you're into weight, a scale weight system can be a great way to know how heavy your car is, and most importantly, where that weight is placed. This is crucial information for rock crawlers, racers, and anyone looking to maximize performance from their ride and ensure consistency from left side to right side and front to back. And if you need to add weight to your ride, it's the best way to know exactly where to place it. I imagine most of you already use one of these, but if you don't, some digital calipers can be an RCer's best friend, and another great way to ensure consistent work, and they can even help when troubleshooting. And I can't imagine my RC life without a pair. Digital calipers used to be pretty dang expensive, but now you can find these for pretty cheap, and they're an RCer's must-have. A temp gun is an often overlooked RC gadget, but they're incredibly useful to have to check your motor's temperature, your ESC, your tires, the surface temperature of your track, or just to monitor your nitro engine's temperature. Temp guns also used to be pretty expensive, but now they're fairly affordable, and they're so useful in so many ways. Speaking of nitro, if you use a LiPo as a receiver battery, an electronic switch with a low voltage cutoff is a must-have to ensure you don't discharge the battery too far on accident. Instead, let the switch do the work, and it'll cut power when it's time. A different solution to monitor your nitro's LiPo is to use the Western Robotics LiPo Monitor, which provides a 10 LED indication of how much power remains in your LiPo. It's not a cutoff though, it just displays the remaining power, but it's a pretty nice gadget for staying on top of your battery's voltage, and it can be used with any 2S application. The last nitro related gadget is just a LiPo equipped glow igniter. Nitro cars need a glow igniter anyways, but a LiPo equipped unit is light years ahead of any other types in terms of ease of use and reliability. Once you use one of these, you'll never use anything else. Here's an interesting RC gadget that we made a video on years ago. It's the Dead Man Switch, which is a unique way to turn on and off your RC crawler without having to remove the body. It basically just uses a scale accessory located on the exterior of your body as a bridge to complete your RC circuitry. Install it to turn on the ride, remove it to shut her down. I admit it, this gadget is completely unnecessary, but we use it all the time. It's a GPS speed meter for determining the speed of your car. It also has some interesting functions like data logging, but its bread and butter is solving the question, how fast is it? Is this a must-have? Well, maybe. It's a smoke absorber for soldering, because if you're soldering in a small unventilated space, you might be breathing in toxic fumes. At our soldering station in our lab here, we have to use one of these because of California law, and I've never used one before, but it is a pretty nice peace of mind item to have, and it's cool to watch it absorb all the fumes. And hey, maybe it's helpful at absorbing other gases. Now that's all the electronic gadgets, but there's still some really cool items in the hobby that I would consider gadgets. Like this extra hand solder holder to hold your wires or connectors when you solder. These particular extra hands are sold with or without the magnifying glass, but there's a lot of different soldering helpers and solder jigs out there, and they can be a real lifesaver when you need an extra hand. With 8-scale vehicles, the driveshaft pin replacement tool is a great tool gadget for replacing worn out 3mm pins on driveshafts rather than replacing the entire driveshaft. You'll still want to replace the outdrives on the diff when you replace those pins, but this can be a huge money savings. Forgive me on this, it's hard to consider this cleaning putty a gadget, but it works so dang well, I just had to include it. With this stuff, you just smooth it over some grime and the putty pulls it off, perfect for all the little nooks and crannies that are hard to clean. And it's especially helpful on nitro cars, because the dirtier the putty gets, the better it works. Magnets, magnetic mats, magnetic trays, magnetic part bowls. These magnetic items can be an RCer's best friend because there's nothing worse than losing a tiny screw or washer that rolled away on the floor. Especially helpful when you wrench over carpet. There's a lot of different magnetic mats and trays out there, and they're definitely recommended. Another headache saver in the organizational front are the compartment trays for storing parts, hardware, or anything else. These particular trays from Ernst lock together when you stack them. They're available in different colors to organize the contents of the trays, and the trays are available in 2 different sizes, and they're a great companion to your RC shop. Now the last item we have for you is something you don't hear talked about very much, but it's just something to help speed up your glue times, and it's CA Glue Kicker. Now you don't actually have to spray Kicker on the glue, instead you spray it inside of a container and then put that container over whatever you just glued and let the fumes do all the work. Plus, it doesn't leave any white frost or residue on the glue bead like can happen when you glue tires. Guys, I'm Brett from AMain Hobbies, and thanks for watching this RC Gadgets video. If you want more info on any of these items, go check out our links down below. And if you want more RC videos, check these out.